Tarnas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this measure.
Please proceed.
Thank you. With your direction, this House took on a job that nobody else was willing to do, but we needed to do it. And that was to evaluate an alternative management framework for Mauna Kea. If people had listened to the University of Hawaii's presentation to the Land Board when they're requesting their new lease, they did evaluate several different possible futures. And when they came to this particular one, which is a management framework without the UH, they said, we really aren't going to evaluate this. We'll leave this to somebody else to do. Well, with your leadership, this House did exactly that. I recognize this is a challenging bill. This is my district. I have constituents who support astronomy on Mauna Kea and constituents who say Native Hawaiians need a greater voice in the governance of Mauna Kea. My goal in taking part in this whole process was to achieve both of those. I recognize the paramount importance of Mauna Kea and the very serious responsibility that we have to manage this public trust resource. There's very strong opinions on all sides of this, and this debate is not over as to what is the best management framework for Mauna Kea. Through this bill, I'm seeking a path forward that provides for substantive role for Native Hawaiians in decision-making about the management of Mauna Kea and a stable future for astronomy on Mauna Kea. I hear from opponents of the bill that the future of astronomy is endangered with this bill. I respond by saying that this new management authority will need to decide about future leases for the existing observatories and for any new observatory that is proposed for the Mauna. These decisions must be made after careful review of the proposed facility, close consultation with all stakeholders, evaluation of the environmental impact, and a determination of just and fair compensation that is to be paid for the privilege of building and operating a facility on Mauna Kea. The directive to the authority to prepare a plan to return the summit to its natural state is justified as an alternative option when evaluating the continued use of the existing observatories or the construction of any new observatory. The bill was amended to say that this plan to return the summit to its natural state should be prepared at the time that the ground-based observatories are considered obsolete because of space-based technology. Personally, I hope that the observatories will be allowed to continue to operate on Mauna Kea for many, many years to come and continue the great discoveries that they are providing to all of us on Earth. I don't expect that space-based telescopes will replace ground-based telescopes anytime soon. But this decision that we are talking about really needs to be made by the authority, not by the legislature. And this authority is to have a greater, more substantive involvement of Native Hawaiians in the decision-making on the Mauna. We made significant improvements to the bill. It still needs more work. For this reason, I want to continue the discussion on the bill, send it to the Senate. I urge the Senate to work with this bill and improve it, send it back to the House so that we can conference on it and find a path forward that is best for the Mauna and for Hawaii. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Tokioka. Okay, is there further discussion? Representative Nakashima.
In support.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I do rise in strong support of HB 2024 relating to the Mauna Kea. Last year, this body adopted House Resolution 33, House Draft 1, establishing the Mauna Kea Working Group to develop recommendations for a new governance and management structure for Mauna Kea that collaboratively engage all stakeholders, particularly the Native Hawaiian community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me, representative for Mauna Kea, the honor and privilege of serving as the chair of this critical working group. The working group developed a report of its recommendations, and it was presented to you in January. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the working group this opportunity to chart a new course for the Mauna. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 2024 reflects the Mauna Kea Working Group's vision for a new future for Mauna Kea. It reflects a shared hope and dream for a better future for the Mauna that includes astronomy and reflects our native Hawaiian values. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 2024 shows that we can do better for Hawaii and care for our environment and our Mauna. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to acknowledge the members of the working group who dedicated 6 months to this important assignment and share information, learn together, and more importantly, shared our respect and aloha for Mauna Kea. There were several members in the audience earlier today, and I would like to ask that we include the list of the community members of the working group in my text.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Holt,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With reservations,
please proceed.
I previously voted no on this measure, and my opposition to this measure was never about the contents and the work that has been done by the working group. I appreciate the chair. I appreciate all the members who've taken the time over the months and many, numerous meetings to get to where we are today. I still have the same concerns, the strong concerns that a lot of members expressed when we did the decision-making for the one hearing we had. I wish that we had more than one hearing in the House. You know, I wish that we had, you hear the voices, they're here, it's loud. They need a venue to speak their truths. You know, by us putting it one day on a Saturday, I don't feel like that was the best way to go about it. But you know, Mr. Speaker, this measure is of such importance, I will not let the mechanics of it be the reason I vote no. You know, last Friday we had our last Hawaiian caucus, talk story with the Hawaiian caucus, with Auntie Noinoi Wong Wilson, Auntie Pua Kanahele, and Mahina Paishan Duarte, who are all participants of the working group. And you know, the discussion that we had put to rest a lot of the fears and concerns which brought about my previous no vote. Mr. Speaker, when I initially heard about the privacy agreement and saw the meeting minutes that came out of the working group, I had major concerns. This is not how we do any other working groups. Why are there special conditions for us? But what I learned through the discussions was that although there was a little bit of a slow start to get to know each other and build a respect level, that there were a lot of very respectful and productive conversations which produced this product which you have today. Mr. Speaker, we as a government have a long way to build back the trust of the Hawaiian community and the community in general. But to me, this could be a first step, but only the first step. You know, whether we pass this bill or not this year, this working group needs to continue, you know, with broader support from the public, you know, hopefully including the other House. And we need to continue these conversations, and we need to build upon what has been worked on over these last few months. But in our discussion, we learned that these meetings only started in September, and we're in March now. It's not even 1 year. We can't stand here and say that we're going to put to rest decades-long issues in 6 months. So although I do appreciate and thank everybody for all the work that's done, I look forward to the long process going forward and continuing to work on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative McKelvey,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too stand with reservations on the measure.
please proceed.
Would first like to adopt the words of the previous speaker as if they were my own, because
So
it
ordered.
really hits the nail on the head. My concerns going along. You know, in committee I said this bill represents the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good were some of the amendments that were made in response to public testimony. Like, for instance, removing the old, abandoned, not used telescopes that are up there anymore. When I was your economic development chair, I went up there with some professors who lamented the fact that you have students who could benefit from the use of telescope time, Native Hawaiian students. And telescope time, Mr. Speaker, is like pilot hours for pilots. What gives kids who want to be in the astronomy field a chance to up their credentials, to stand out from other programs. And here they were, like you once mentioned, like the thing out of Star Wars with the eye coming out of it, this rusty, shuttered telescope just sitting there. And also re-examining the issue of commercial activity, as was stated by the speaker from Kihei back in the committee hearing as well. Unfortunately, though, there are some bad things, and one is that this is an authority, an absolute authority, and one that will last. This bill is envisioned, and the commission is envisioned to last in perpetuity. 20, 30, 40 years. What happens in that time if they make decisions in that group that run counter to the community, to Native Hawaiians everywhere? I mean, this is something that needs to be examined. But I think, you know, the one thing about it, though, is I've heard over and over again in talking to many people on the sides of the issue, and that is this. The present situation is untenable. To do nothing, to have no conversation whatsoever, basically kicks the can down the road. And I think that's one thing. In speaking to one person of the bill, I said, if you were a representative, how would you go on this thing if you were in my shoes? And they said, we would support it with reservations to signify the amount of work that needs to be done, but the work cannot continue. The conversation can continue unless there is a way to continue it. And so I just wanted to echo my reservations on the measure today. Thank you.
Representative Capella,
With reservations, Mr. Speaker.
please proceed.
I appreciate this measure's efforts to address the longstanding criticism of the University of Hawaii's mismanagement of the Mauna. I agree with those criticisms and the fact that we must remove UH as the manager of Mauna Kea. As a Native Hawaiian woman, though, I want to state that this measure must not enable a process that leads to the construction of TMT on Mauna Kea. This is not just about a telescope or the role of astronomy in Hawaii. It's about the ongoing displacement of Hawaiian people within our own homeland. We are taking steps this year to rectify some of the problems facing Native Hawaiian people, including appropriating $600 million for Hawaiian homelands. That is a generational investment in the well-being of Hawaii's Native people. We should sustain our focus on undoing the legacy of colonialism and historical trauma that continues to harm the Native Hawaiian community. We should rededicate ourselves to restoring Hawaiian stewardship of our Aina. It is, after all, our land, Hawaiians' land, that was stolen, colonized, and corporatized. To repair those historical injustices, we should uplift Hawaiians' rights to self-determination, especially when it comes to the fate of our most sacred spaces. I am glad that we are finally addressing the mismanagement of Mauna Kea, which has been detailed by Hawaiian cultural practitioners and our state auditor for over a decade. Let's use this as an opportunity to rebuild the public trust for our islands, for Native people, and not just another telescope on sacred ground. Thank you.
Representative Kumi,
With reservations.
so ordered. Representative Wallberger,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With reservations and hopes for an inclusive process for this very important work, I was very encouraged after the Hawaiian Caucus meeting we had the other day that the folks that have worked on this have been extremely comprehensive, extremely cooperative, and extremely collaborative. And I look forward to this being a healing and inclusive result. Thank you.
okay, Representative Kitagawa,
With reservations, please.
so ordered. Representative Peruso,
With reservations, and I'd like to again enter the words from the representative from Ka'awaloa, Captain Cook, into the journal as if they were my own. Thank you.
so ordered. Representative Ward,
Speaker, no vote
please proceed.
with reservations. And I know there is not a category no with reservations, but there is something good in the bill. It's better than nothing, but there is something better than nothing that I think we can do and that we should still be working on. My problem is that there's too much virtue signaling of what we've done and what we can do. My sense is eventually this is just going to kick the can down the mountain and this stuff is going to rise up again and hit us in the face. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, no vote with some virtue and with reservations. Thank you.
All right, a no vote with reservations equals yes vote. Thank you. Representative Okimoto,
With reservations, please.
so ordered.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Quinlan,
with reservations,
so ordered.
and may I have the words of the representative from Lahaina, as well as the words of the chair of the Native Hawaiian Caucus entered into the record as if they were my own.
So ordered. Representative Matsumoto,
With reservations, please.
so ordered. Further discussion. Representative Gates.
With reservation, Speaker. And may I adopt the words of the representative from Kalihi as into the journal as if they were my own?
So ordered.
Mahalo.
Further discussion. Representative Bronco.
With reservations, and may I adopt the words of the representative from Kamuela as if they're my own?
So ordered.
And brief comment as well.
Please proceed.
The Wākea Stewardship Authority legislation will establish a new paradigm for managing and caring for our wahipana, significant cultural, historic, and ecological important places in Hawaii based on Hawaiian culture, values, and principles. Also of importance is the need for the Native Hawaiian and community participation in the formation and ongoing oversight of these entities and these special places. This is one of the reasons I vote WR, is I believe that the astronomical community should have a seat at the table. But more importantly, this hard conversation happened, and this is a move forward. And only with hard conversations can we get to a consensus. And I believe that we've gotten there, but we still need one more voice at the table. But also what's most important is to note that this is equity for Native Hawaiians. And with the working group that is proposed, Native Hawaiians will have a significant amount of equity at the table. Mahalo.
Representative Ward, are you still in support?
In fact, point of information, Mr. Speaker. I said no, and then I said with reservations. You were joking, of course. This is a prime psyche humor, I gather.
Please proceed, Representative Ward.
Okay, no with reservations. I just wanted to make sure that the chair of the Hawaiian Caucus words were entered into the journal as my own, please.
It's so ordered.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Okay, if not, we will. Representative Tokioka.
Mr. Speaker, at the appropriate time, can we go back to StanCom Committee Report 794?
Yes, let's do that now. 794. Representative Tokioka.
With reservations.
So ordered. Further discussion on 794? Okay, is there any other discussion on these measures? If not, we'll be taking the vote. So for the floor vote, Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. StanCom Report number 919, HB number 2024 HD1, the following vote no. Bert Kobayashi, Dale Kobayashi, Lopresti, Lowen. Thank you.
Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 31, SCR 919, HB 2024, HD1, I believe Representative Ward votes no.
If so, said measures pass third reading. We'll be taking a brief recess, subject to the call of the chair. Recess.